I never thought a night on the sidewalk would be my final lesson in love. My name is Samantha Ross. Most people called me Sam, and until 8 months ago, I thought I was married to the kind of man you could build a life with. I believed in vows, in building a home from the ground up, in loyalty. I believed in Nathan. That belief died on a Tuesday. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. I remember it all too clearly. I came home from my shift at the bookstore, humming a lullaby I'd been practicing for the baby, to find the locks changed. The key I always carried in my purse, attached to the tiny gold keychain Nathan gave me on our first anniversary, wouldn't turn. I tried again and again. Then I saw the note taped to the door. Don't make a scene. Everything's been taken care of. You'll figure it out. I stood there in my maternity coat, the one that barely zipped anymore, with swollen ankles and a plastic bag of groceries tearing at my wrist, and reread it like it would somehow morph into something kinder, more human. But it didn't. Nathan and I met 5 years earlier at a corporate retreat, where I was working the registration desk and he was a rising financial executive. He liked the way I corrected people gently, always smiled, never snapped. He said I had a librarian's charm and a lion's mind. Funny how that mind hadn't seen what he was plotting. When we married, he insisted on handling all the financials. Less stress for you, he said. You handle the house, I'll handle the paperwork. I was too in love to notice that our house was in his name, that our savings account only had his name on it, that my credit card statements were quietly being rerouted to an old email address I never used anymore. After the eviction, I tried calling him once, straight to voicemail. Then the message changed. If you're looking for handouts, try the shelters. It hit harder than the slap I imagined. I couldn't reach anyone on his side of the family. They had always been cool to me, especially his stepmother, who referred to me as the charity case with the book hobby. His father, Raymond Ross, was different. Quiet man. Old money but not loud about it. He once told me I reminded him of his late wife. He never elaborated, and I never pried. I didn't know it then, but he had been watching everything unfold. I ended up at a women's shelter in Midtown. I shared a room with 2 other pregnant women, one of whom was only 16 and afraid to even look at her belly. The nights were cold, but the staff was kind, and when you're as low as I was, kindness feels like gold. The baby was due in 2 months. I couldn't afford a doctor's appointment, but the shelter partnered with a mobile clinic, and I went in weekly for checkups. That baby was the only thing keeping me grounded. Every time I felt a kick, I told myself I'd get back up, that this wouldn't be the end of my story. Then came the letter. It was delivered to the shelter, an envelope with my name written in thick black ink. I thought it was a bill or legal notice. But when I opened it, my hands trembling, I found a single sheet of paper, folded twice. At the top, the Ross family estate crest. Samantha, if you're reading this, it means I've passed. There is something I need you to be present for. The reading of my will. Wednesday, 10 a.m. Ross and Halvorsen LLP. Bring identification. Signed in careful looping script. Raymond F. Ross. I sat there, staring at the paper like it was forged by angels. My mind spiraled. Why me? Why now? The shelter director, Rosa, gave me an old navy dress coat from the donation bin and loaned me bus fare. I went to a thrift shop and found a pair of worn flats. My stomach was so large now, I had to shuffle slowly down the sidewalk, one hand on my belly and the other on my courage. When I arrived at the law firm, the receptionist looked up and blinked twice. Name, she asked. Samantha Ross. Well, Samantha was my married name. The receptionist paused, then checked a list. You're on it. I expected a cold reception when I entered the conference room. Instead, I walked into a room full of astonishment. Nathan was there, of course. Armani suit, slicked back hair. The smirk of a man certain he's already won. His new girlfriend was beside him, the one he replaced me with. Silicone smile, designer heels. The rest of the room was filled with Raymond's relatives. cousins, old business partners, and his stepwife. They all looked at me like I'd wandered in by mistake. "You're not seriously letting her in here?" Nathan sneered. "She's not family anymore." The lawyer, Mr. Halvorsen, cleared his throat. "Actually, she is." I sat down slowly. My hands trembled as I folded them over my belly. "Thank you all for coming," Halvorsen began, adjusting his glasses. Mr. Ross was very clear in his final wishes. There will be no contesting, no appeals, and no negotiations. What you hear today is final. The air tightened. He opened a thick folder. "Raymond Frederick Ross, being of sound mind and body, hereby leaves the following." The list began traditionally. Donations to a few charities, a vintage car to a lifelong friend, shares of Ross Holdings split among minor relatives. Then came the pause. "To my son, Nathan Ross, I leave the lesson of loss. I trusted you to build a life, and you built a performance. My estate is not a prize for betrayal." Gasps echoed through the room. Nathan shot to his feet. "This is a joke." He was sick. He was confused. Halvorsen raised a hand. "There's more." He continued reading. "To Samantha Ross, mother of my grandchild, the only person who treated me as more than a bank account, I leave the Ross estate in entirety, including the house in Westbridge, all residual accounts, stocks, bonds, and ownership of Ross Books Limited, effective immediately." The room went silent. Took a moment to process. Me. The girl who walked in with a donated coat and a second-hand purse was now the owner of a multimillion-dollar estate. Nathan's girlfriend started crying. His stepmother nearly fainted. And Nathan himself. He sat down slowly, stunned, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. I just blinked. "Would you like us to call you a car?" the lawyer asked gently. He nodded. For the first time in months, someone was offering to take me somewhere. Not away, but forward. The car that pulled up wasn't just a ride. It was a statement. A black town car with tinted windows and a driver who called me ma'am, like I'd been someone important my whole life. I climbed in slowly, awkward with the weight of my belly and the weight of my thoughts. My hands rested over the curve of my stomach while the city blurred past the window. I wasn't sure what to feel, vindicated, overwhelmed, suspicious. All I knew was that everything had changed. Again. The Ross estate in Westbridge looked like something out of a history book. Stone columns, stained glass, rose gardens even in winter. I used to visit once a year, always feeling out of place. Now the security guard at the gate saluted as the car drove in. He opened the door for me like I was royalty. "Welcome home, Ms. Ross," he said. I nearly laughed. Inside, everything smelled like cedarwood and old paper. A woman in a dark blazer introduced herself as Janice, the house steward. She spoke gently, professionally. Told me the staff had been informed. The will had been filed. The estate was mine. Janice handed me a stack of keys and a folder with a new set of bank account details. Under my name. Not Nathan's. Not ours. Just mine. She led me upstairs to the master bedroom. "Mr. Ross wanted to make sure you'd be comfortable." Comfortable. I stood there in my thrift store flats, on a Persian rug worth more than my entire salary last year. That night, I slept on a four-poster bed, curled around my unborn child, still half afraid I'd wake up and find it all gone. The next morning, the media exploded. Ross heir disinherited in shocking will twist. Pregnant ex-wife inherits Ross empire. From shelter to estate, the woman who took it all. Reporters swarmed outside the gate. Janice handled them. She also brought in a PR specialist, someone Raymond had hired in advance. A woman named Kyra who specialized in high-profile family messes. "This was always part of the plan," Kyra told me. "Raymond knew the sharks would circle. You were his safety net, and now you're the fortress." Nathan, on the other hand, went ballistic. He tried to sue, claiming I coerced his father. The court laughed him out the door. He tried leaking my personal info to tabloids, only for his own shady financial trail to surface instead. He even showed up at the estate one day, screaming at the gate. You think you won because of a signature on paper. That money was mine. I stood at the top of the steps, looking down at him. For a moment, I felt sorry for the man who once said he'd love me forever. But only for a moment. I wasn't content to just have the estate. I needed to understand it. I pored through old files, sat down with the accountants, walked through the Ross Holdings portfolio. I found things Nathan never told me. Investments I never knew we had. Debt he hid. But I also found something else. A locked drawer in Raymond's personal study. Janice handed me the key one rainy morning and said simply, "He asked me to give this to you once you were ready." Inside were 3 items. 1, a dusty journal with Raymond's handwriting. 2, a legal document labeled Adoption, Samantha Ross. 3, a flash drive. I started with the journal. Raymond wrote like a man who didn't trust many people. Pages and pages of thoughts about the company, about Nathan's arrogance, about the cold woman he married after his first love died. And then about me. She's the only one who ever asked how I was doing without needing something in return. She reads to me when I can't sleep. She reminds me of Evelyn. Evelyn, his late wife. I flipped to the back. The entries became more intentional. Nathan has no soul left. The business would die in his hands. I'll protect her. And the baby. She won't see it coming, but it's what she deserves. A real start. The adoption form was real. Checked it twice. Not symbolic, legal. Raymond had filed paperwork to become my adoptive father-in-law as an individual, not tied to Nathan. That's why the will was bulletproof. But it was the flash drive that shook me. I clicked it into my laptop with trembling fingers. Contained video clips. Secret ones. One was a recording of Nathan drunk, bragging to a friend at a rooftop bar. The audio was grainy, but the words were clear. I married her because my dad liked her. The second I get access to the inheritance, she's gone. You'll see. Another clip showed him in the study, talking to his stepmother. I'll get her out before the baby arrives. We don't need her. We just need her gone. It wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated cruelty. I sent those clips to Kyra. She watched them with pursed lips. These will bury him. If you want to go public. No, I said quietly. I don't want revenge. I want a future. But I kept the files. And I made sure copies existed. In the cloud, in encrypted drives, and in the hands of Raymond's lawyer. Just in case. Because you never know when a ghost from the past will try to rise again. Then came the baby. I went into labor 2 weeks early. Right there in the library of the estate. Janice called the driver, and Kyra rushed over. It was chaotic, beautiful, terrifying. 8 hours later, I was holding a little girl in my arms. She had my nose. And Raymond's eyes. I named her Evelyn Grace. She was everything I had left and everything I had now. But the peace didn't last. 6 weeks later, I received a letter from the courthouse. Nathan had filed for emergency custody. He claimed I was mentally unfit. That I had manipulated an old man to steal a fortune. And was emotionally unstable after pregnancy. He wanted Evelyn. He was ready to go to war. But so was I. I never imagined I'd end up in court again. But this time, I wasn't the one on the defensive. Nathan had filed for emergency custody of Evelyn. In his statement, he painted me as manipulative, unstable, and mentally unfit. He described the estate as a chaotic environment with no male presence, and implied that the only reason I was awarded it was due to inappropriate influence over his father. It was classic Nathan. Arrogant, entitled, and utterly unprepared for the storm he'd just walked into. Kyra assembled a team of lawyers who moved faster than I could think. They had already anticipated this. Apparently, Raymond had too. You were never just a beneficiary, Samantha, Kyra told me the day before the hearing. You were his final act of justice. I nodded slowly, bouncing Evelyn in my arms. Let's make sure he's heard. The courtroom was full on the day of the hearing. Media, family members, curious onlookers. The judge was a stern woman in her 50s named Judge Wallace, with silver-streaked hair and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who didn't suffer fools. Nathan strutted in with his lawyer and a custom suit. He looked like he expected to win by simply showing up. I walked in holding Evelyn, dressed in a soft blue blouse and flats, no makeup, just me. I wasn't there to put on a show. I was there to fight for my daughter. Nathan's lawyer opened with a dramatic statement about psychological distress, lack of a stable environment, and emotional manipulation of a dying man. I kept my eyes on Judge Wallace the entire time. Then it was our turn. My lawyer stood and began. Your Honor, before we address the character of my client, I'd like to submit 3 exhibits into evidence. Visual and audio recordings retrieved from the late Raymond Ross's personal effects. The courtroom buzzed. Objection. Overruled, Judge Wallace said firmly. Let's see them. The first clip played on the monitor. Nathan at the rooftop bar. The second I get access to the inheritance, she's gone. You'll see. The second clip. Nathan in the Ross study. We don't need her. We just need her gone. And the third. His voice, raw, laughing, as he talked about how easy it was to cut me off financially. By the time the last clip ended, there was no sound in the courtroom. Nathan turned pale. His lawyer was sweating. Judge Wallace turned to me. Ms. Ross, would you like to speak? I rose. I held Evelyn against my chest and stepped forward. Your Honor, I'm not here to strip a child of her father. I'm here because a man who planned to abandon his unborn child now wants to take her from the mother who raised her from day one. Because he lost money, and thinks this child is compensation. I turned to face Nathan. You didn't want her, Nathan. You didn't want me. You wanted what I inherited. But what you don't understand is, she's not property. She's a person. And I won't let you use her to settle your own bruised ego. The judge stared at Nathan for a long, cold moment. Then she said, request for emergency custody is denied. In fact, I'm moving to restrict visitation until a psychiatric evaluation is completed. Nathan's jaw clenched. As for you, Ms. Ross, you've demonstrated nothing but stability, foresight, and grace in the face of cruelty. This court commends you. The gavel came down like thunder. I didn't cry. Not in that moment. I just breathed. For the first time in a long time, I really breathed. And Evelyn? She smiled in her sleep. After the hearing, everything moved quickly. Nathan went silent. His legal team dropped him after the recordings leaked. His stepmother left the country, and Ross Holdings' stock soared with news that I'd retained leadership and appointed a new board. I reopened Ross Books Limited, Raymond's beloved long-forgotten publishing house, and turned it into a small press for female authors who had faced adversity. The first book we published, a memoir titled The Will That Named Me, sold out in 3 weeks. One day, while reorganizing Raymond's study, I found a letter wedged between books. It was addressed to me. Samantha, I saw who you really were long before my son did. You listened. You gave without asking. You reminded me that character is louder than charm. This house, this business, it was never meant to be a reward. It was meant to be a seed. Plant something worthy. And grow. Raymond. I read it twice, then pressed it to my chest. And I promised him I would. Years passed. Evelyn grew into a fierce little girl with questions about everything. She knew her grandfather by his portraits on the wall and the bedtime stories I told her. She knew that her last name was Ross, but not because of her father. Because of her legacy. Because of her story. One day when she's ready, I'll tell her everything. About the sidewalk, the shelter, the courtroom. About Raymond. And about how love can come from the most unexpected places. Until then, I watch her run through the rose gardens that Raymond once walked through in silence. She laughs now. And I do too. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.